is that South Africa has no tolerance for protest culture. The funny thing is that I was there on that day, and many of us gotten beaten, tear gassed by the cops, and that's a story that's not told because the journalist had left at that time. So on that day, we thought as students we were there to occupy Luthuli House, but because of politics and the political interests that were there, because we had student leaders who were leading Fees Must Fall, but who were working for the government that perpetuates a system of black exclusion, of black oppression. So I think 20 of us, majority black women, after those students have left, after all of those crowds left, we sat there and occupied Luthuli House. And in our occupation, we were met with police brutality and violence. And it's not a narrative that's reported on because all the journalists had left. So when I say there's no tolerance for protest culture, I don't only mean Fees Must Fall. Andries Tatane, an activist who was protesting for water, was killed in this country by cops. Professor mentioned Marikana. So there are more cases like this where a person might not actually be physically killed, but you can still see the bullet wounds. You can still see the rubber bullets. You see the tension that it has. So it is evident that protest culture in this country is not tolerated by the state.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Sunday, June 26th, 2016. So I have been told. Quick reminder, I made a request at the end of the broadcast yesterday evening that if folks could find the specific audio segments where Mr. Fuller and Dr. Welsing were referencing Darth Vader, Star Wars, and how that relates to white supremacy. Someone already located where Mr. Fuller was doing this, so now we just need Dr. Welsing. And I think I can recall her doing this more than once. I just can't recall the exact broadcast where she did this. So if you have free time, if you're looking for a project, something constructive to do, want to go through the archives and listen to some Dr. Welsing content, if you can find the one specifically where she's talking about Darth Vader and the symbolism, how that relates to white supremacy, that would be much obliged. There's a small project I would like to work on, and that would be a part of it. Right on. That's it. We emphasize consistently the importance of thinking about, talking about racism, white supremacy as a global problem. I think that's very important. I think frequently racists kind of steer us in the direction of thinking that this is something isolated, that this is only a problem in certain areas, that maybe it's only a problem in the southern United States, or maybe it's only a problem in South Africa, but that's mostly wrapped up, and that, generally everybody gets along. And I've concluded that nothing could be further from the truth, that white supremacy is the dominant system worldwide. I think it's grand anytime we get an opportunity to talk to whites and non-white people in different parts of the globe, just to see the consistencies, compare and contrast how that system operates. For the broadcast today, as I said, there are lots and lots of anniversaries in the month of June. There have been lots of them in the states that we've been talking about this month, with James Meredith, the March Against Fear, even more recently with the one-year anniversary of the Charleston, South Carolina massacre in South Africa. They are recognizing the 40-year anniversary of the Soweto student uprisings from 1976. They're also having a lot of 20-year reflections on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was put in place after the fall, so they say, of apartheid to get accurate, truthful information about some of the atrocities that happened. They're reflecting on that, its strengths, weaknesses throughout the year. The Stream, Al Jazeera, they have a program called The Stream. They recently did a segment on the Soweto student uprisings where they had a panel of guests. One of them in particular, I thought she had a lot of great things to say. Reached out to her. I thought it would be great to have her on the program. She is a student activist, storyteller, a rape survivor, and has written talked about, done a lot of constructive content in terms of addressing the problems that Black people face in South Africa. She has a special interest in uplifting, empowering, educating Black girls, Black females in general in South Africa. Real pleasure to have her on the program, and hopefully I can say her name correctly the first time. Joining us live, our guest, Simamkele Dlakavu. Are you with us, ma'am?
Yes, that was not bad.
Right on. Real pleasure to have you joining us live on the program. If there's anything that you think it would be important for listeners to know about.
No. I think I'm very excited to be on the show, firstly, because, I'm a Pan-Africanist, and it's great to be in a conversation with an African-American and be on this platform. I had the pleasure last year of engaging with students from Howard who were visiting the country, and the connection was so deep because I think even though slavery and colonialism divide us, I feel a deep connection with all Black people in the diaspora. So thank you for having me.
Again, pleasure is ours. Pleasure is ours. Always great when we can talk to folks on the continent. I think it's obvious if folks have seen the image that we have promoting the broadcast, but you are a Black female, is that correct?
Yeah.
Right on. This program, I use the term white supremacy and the term racism. I use them as synonyms, and I use the same definition for both terms. The definition I use is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white, and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think such a system exists? Do you think that definition is accurate?
I do definitely believe that such a system exists, and it's very evident. It's evident in the whole world. In South Africa, it's evident every day because South Africa had slavery, colonialism, and it had apartheid. So it had a settler, colonization. So the people that colonized us didn't leave after colonization. They believed that this was their land too, and they still own the large percentage of our country's wealth, even though they are a minority. White supremacy affects South Africans in different ways. So it's evident in our education system. We learn more about the West and whites' lived experiences than we do our own. We learn more. We are taught by white bodies mostly. It's evident in our media, the definitions of beauty, who make up the covers of magazines, for instance. Even in Africa, it's evident in who occupies, for instance, corporate South Africa and the means of production. So white supremacy is embedded in our country.
I listen to Cape Talk Radio pretty regularly, weekly, and they had a segment on not that long ago, and they were saying that for a time, I don't know if it's still the case currently, like 2016, but I mean recent history within the last decade or so, that it was much easier if you were trying to buy a doll, like for children. If you were going to buy a doll, it would be much easier to find a white doll than a black doll in South Africa, where the population is, I would say, in the ballpark of about 80% black, might even be higher than that. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. It's very sad, and that's definitely true. I have plenty of nieces, and two of them live in Johannesburg. One is 5 years old, and the other one is just under 2. And her mother is Namibian, and my father is, my brother is South African. And finding dolls for them, black dolls for them, was very difficult. So some dolls had to be ordered because, as research has shown, is that a black young girl owning a black doll and growing up with it and seeing that this doll is beautiful has an effect on the self-esteem. I remember a show a few years ago on the Oprah Winfrey show. This black young woman did a doll test with young black girls where they were asked which doll is the most beautiful. And all of the black girls chose the white doll, and then they were asked which doll is most reflective of you. And then they chose the black doll, and they started crying because they were saying, by saying that the white doll is beautiful and the black doll is ugly, they were reflecting, self-hate. And so my sister and I watched that show a few years ago. So we've engaged in a deliberate process of just making sure that our nieces understand that they're beautiful and they lack beautiful skin.
Wow, awesome. What about your childhood? Did you have access to black dolls and constructed beautiful images of black people growing up?
Definitely not. I didn't have access. I don't think I've ever owned a black doll growing up. But I did have images of beautiful black women growing up. Obviously, my parents and my mom and my grandmother and my sisters, etc., and my aunts, and even on television. But it was a certain kind of black beauty. So I used to watch a lot of Oprah when I was growing up. And obviously, American influences are a deep part of South African life. And obviously Destiny's Child, etc., and American TV shows. But it was a certain kind of beauty, black beauty, that was promoted. So it was a black beauty that often had lighter skin, black beauty that had straight hair, it had not natural hair, and it had a certain figure, so thin, etc. So it was a kind of beauty that is, celebrated by white supremacist systems. So as I went to university and I started reading, Steve Biko and the ideas of black consciousness, I threw away, those images of beauty. I threw away my extensions, and I started, growing my hair naturally and loving the skin holistically. This is not to throw shade on anyone who has a weave or whatever. It's their choice. Weaves are beautiful. Black women are beautiful in whatever kind of hair they choose to have. But the problem that I have is that we can't promote a single image of beauty and of black beauty.
Context of White Supremacy. You mentioned Steve Biko. Checked out your Twitter feed, which is linked in the description to the program if folks want to follow. You have a passage, it's your pinned post, passage from Steve Biko where he writes, "Does this mean I am against integration? If by integration you understand a breakthrough into white society by blacks, an assimilation and acceptance of blacks into an already established set of norms and code of behavior set up by and maintained by whites, then yes, I am against it. I am against the superior, inferior, white-black stratification that makes the white a perpetual teacher and the black a perpetual pupil and a poor one at that." Why is this your pinned tweet? What does this represent? This passage specifically represent for you?
I am against it because, it's very important to me. Like Steve Biko and all his works in general is very important to me. It's important because, for instance, South Africa with the Nelson Mandela Project and the Reconciliation Project that you mentioned earlier on in the show, is that we were made to believe that we are a rainbow nation, we are a miracle country, and that it's all good and well, black and white people united and are living happily ever after, and those are the images that we continuously see, not only in our media, but in international media, because that is the political message that this country is trying to promote. But it's not like that at all. So Steve Biko is important because he warned us about integrating and how integration will maintain the system of white supremacy, will maintain, as he said, that the system that maintains black people as always inferior and white people as always superior. And not only in just the material sense of like owning the land, owning the economy, but when it comes to knowledge production. So, for instance, he mentions how there's an intellectual arrogance of white people that make them believe that white leadership is, the best, white ideas and thoughts are the best. And those are the struggles that students in South Africa are fighting now. They are calling for decolonization. And by decolonization of the universities, we mean that we are tired of symbols, for instance, of roads must fall, of our oppressors being all over our campuses. We are tired of just being continuously taught by white males and white women, etc. We're tired of being taught Eurocentric forms of knowledge production and value systems. We're tired of being perpetual learners of white supremacy, because we can never truly accepted. We can never be truly accepted by white supremacy. We can never truly understand it. Instead of us, engaging in a project of black love, of black dignity, and of black justice. So it was just a reminder that we were warned about what's happening today. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, by people like Steve Biko.
Right on. And extremely important literature, in my opinion. Mr. Steve Biko, outstanding understanding of white supremacy demonstrated in his writing. Is it acceptable, just so we can kind of get some context about you and your views? I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you were part of what they call the Born Frees, the generation after the formal end of apartheid. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. So I was... the 90s, the early 90s were the formal end of apartheid, and we got the first democratic election was in 1994. So I was born after Nelson Mandela was released, and in 1992, and other political movements were unbanned in the country, and the negotiations for the new South Africa were starting to happen in 1992. So the people that were born in that time and after are considered people that are born free. They never had to experience apartheid in the formal sense. So I never had to carry a pass book, or I've never had to, for instance, be legally discriminated against on the basis of my race. So I've never had to, for instance, be denied certain access to certain spaces because of my race, etc., etc. So that's what they call us, born free. But I don't believe in the thesis of born free, because freedom is not just about being able to sit next to a white person on a bench, or being able to go swim in a white beach, or a beach that was denied to black people under apartheid. For freedom, for me, is material. The fact that, black people in this country still don't have access to their stolen land by white people. The fact that, for instance, an Oxfam report indicates that 2 white men in South Africa own the same wealth as the bottom half of the South African population. That is not freedom to me. The fact that, black miners who were asking for a living wage, who are mining daily in this country, risking their lives, and who are asking for minimum wage to send their kids to school, to feed their children, they were murdered by the government. That's not freedom to me. And even the same born frees, statistics show that majority of them are neither in institutions of learning or employed. So if you can't feed yourself, if you can't get educated, if you can't get a job, what kind of freedom is that? You can't even get a cafe to go to the same beach that was previously denied to you, and now apparently you can go access.
Wow. I know here in the States and elsewhere, but people frequently will say, well, hey, you didn't have to go through formal apartheid or formal Jim Crow. You didn't experience all that. Yeah. So why are you so angry about all this? Things are a lot better for you. And even sometimes we've heard from people that their parents and aunts, uncles, people in their family will be like, I don't understand. I went through, a lot of worse forms of white supremacy than you did. I don't understand why you're so upset about this. What kind of attitude have your parents and family members taken towards your activism?
So my parents are ANC voters because I think the politics of memory, the ANC has been good at that, or rewriting memory. So the ANC has been good because it was one of the few parties that got to negotiate with the apartheid government, is that it's been good in rewriting history. So, for instance, there's a narrative that they are the party that liberated us. They are the party that fought apartheid. No, they were not. Millions of black South Africans fought apartheid in every day, right? There were so many political movements that fought apartheid. Steve Biko came about in a time where there was a political vacuum in the country. The apartheid government had banned political movements. They had arrested political prisoners like Nelson Mandela, and so they were operating by themselves, and they worked to challenge the apartheid system by themselves, right, without the ANC. And so my parents are a part of the generation that has been really affected by this political brainwashing. I feel that the ANC is the only force and only political party to liberate us, and it's very sad to have lived in a system like apartheid and colonialism, because you learn, and sometimes I don't blame our parents, because for them, the fact that, I am at university right now, something that they would have never dreamed it was possible for them, the fact that I can have white colleagues, for instance, and move around, those are the things that they never dreamed of. They feel that, why are you complaining sometimes? But for me, I don't believe that freedom was about individuals, I don't believe that, and this whole idea of token blackness, so the few blacks that make it or have some kind of form of success should be enough. It's not enough. Like, if majority of young black people in this country don't have access to education, higher education or employment, and the fact that a lot of them are stuck in prisons or are involved in drug and alcohol abuse, that's not freedom. That should not be enough for us. And so my parents were uneasy. So even during the Fees Must Fall protest, they were like, don't be in the front, you'll get hurt, etc. And then when they learned that I did get hurt, they were like, stop this. But I think they're coming to understand that I took my mom to hear Julius Malema speak, who's the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, a political party here in South Africa, which is advocating for the return of black people's land, for the access of black people to their mineral resources, and for free education and healthcare and all of those basic services. So I took her to hear him out. And I think there was a different kind of change that happened in her. And I take her to a lot of the things and the workshops I host for township and rural youth, so that she sees the why. And so I think she's starting to see the difference and the fact that we have not achieved freedom.
Context of White Supremacy, again joining us live from South Africa, our guest, Ms. Simamkele Dlakavu. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah.
Right on. You mentioned roads must fall, and I know fees must fall, roads must fall, a lot of the protests that have been happening over the last 2 years or so, really. Can you kind of explain for maybe listeners who have not been paying attention, or maybe just kind of briefly saw it, kind of what those protests have been about and your involvement?
Okay. So Roads Must Fall started last year at the University of Cape Town by these same born frees, right? These young people that were supposed to be happy with the system. So Cecil John Rhodes was a man from the UK who came to South Africa with the other colonizers, took people's land, created De Beers, the famous diamond company, used cheap black labor, was engaged in the murder of black bodies in mines and elsewhere, and made a fortune. So the famous Rhodes Scholarship that people like Bill Clinton were scholars of comes from Cecil Rhodes. So his image was on the top of the UCT entrance. So he had a big statue at UCT, like to honor this man because he had donated land, apparently, land he stole from black people for the building of the University of Cape Town. So black students were like, why are you glorifying these murderers, these colonialists? Why is his statue here and we are okay with it? So they called for Rhodes, the hashtag was Rhodes must fall, his statue must fall. And they called for the decolonization of UCT in terms of space, the fact that we glorify white slave owners, white colonialists, and people who contributed to apartheid. They called for the fall of those symbols, and amongst other things. And one student, his name is Kumani Makole, threw poo at the Rhodes statue. Which caused a lot of hoo-ha in the country. And then because students mobilized and protested, the Rhodes statue did fall. And so now they've been engaged in the project of decolonization besides the actual statue itself. And so fees must fall happened because in South Africa, fees are commodified, right? Although in the first democratic election, we were promised that there would be free education 2 decades ago. It's still not the case. And so black students yearly in their numbers deregister and get financially excluded from university because they can't afford to pay the university fees. My school fees right now is 40,000 Rand. And that's, I don't know what the the dollar exchange rate right now. But it's just 40,000 Rand maybe is just below 4,000, no, not 40,000 Rand. Okay, I'm not going to try, I'm bad at math. And a lot of black parents can't afford that. There's a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of poverty. So some parents don't even earn that in a year. So how do we expect to decrease the cycle of poverty when we deny black students access to education that will help them get jobs? So students across the country in their thousands protested for against fees to fall. But we didn't win that battle. We won because the government is not prepared, doesn't have the political will for free education. It subscribes to capitalism, and we know that white supremacy and capitalism and capitalist exploitation are linked. So they appease the students by saying that student fees will not increase. So just for 1 year, we were saved kind of from the fact that student fees would increase, but it's still expensive. So students are still engaged in the fight for free education because we understand that commodification of education will continuously exclude black students in their numbers.
For folks that are listening, and I mean, if you need like start terms, what white supremacy means, I think it's important. I think generally South Africa is considered one of the strongest economies on the continent right now, generally speaking. That's mostly what I've heard. I could be in error, but I think that's often what's repeated. The exchange rate is $1, one rand, right? 1 rand is about 6 cents U.S., 6 cents. So if you're a school, the fees are 40,000 Rand, that would be about $2,600, $2,600 U.S. That, in my view, that's like putting it real stark if you want to put a number on it in terms of racism, white supremacy, and how that plays out economically worldwide. That said, that is going to be something we come back to with the discussion on Brexit. With I want to get your opinion, because with the Rhodes Must Fall, the iconography of white supremacy is worldwide, world system. So you have these type of symbols in the language, the way that we use words, who has a statue of, what we name buildings, what we name pieces of land. That is an integral aspect of white supremacy worldwide. They've had a lot of the campaigns here in the U.S. about removing statues of racists and taking some of the enslaving whites off of the money, speaking of currency. They've had a lot of campaigns around that for years, taking down the Confederate flag. I've taken the position that all of that stuff should stay up until the system has been replaced. They were talking about Ben Tillman and the Confederate flag in South Carolina, and taking that stuff down after the shooting last year at Charleston, South Carolina church. And in my view, it's very easy to take that stuff down. And really what I've seen that's more insidious is that a lot of time whites, they can take that stuff down, and then they can just pretend that after about 3 or 4 years, as you were talking about the way that memory is controlled, people forget that this stuff was ever up, and they just pretend that everything was great and we never had this problem and we never even had a statue. Who is Cecil Rhodes? I don't even remember who this guy is. What are you talking about? They're very good, and in my opinion, that makes it even more difficult because it really gives us a false sense of history, how we got to this point, and things that have been done to black people that really give us an accurate explanation of why things look the way they are, which is why I've just taken the position I would much rather have all of these statues don't change anything, so that we can all be very clear about the world in which we live that is dominated by white supremacy. That's why we can't get these fees changed. That's why we can't get these curriculums changed. That's why we don't have enough a proper, accurate representation of black students. That's all because we're still under white supremacy, and once that system has been permanently neutralized, eliminated, then we can take all that stuff down. What do you think about that?
I politely disagree, because I feel like we have to understand trauma, and respect people's pain. So what white supremacy does is not just, the memory of it is traumatic. So a lot of Rhodes Must Fall students would say that seeing this man and knowing what he did is very traumatic to me. And so I believe that we can have different forms of memory. Because for me, a statue is a glorification of someone or something. And I don't think these people must be glorified at all. I'd rather have a statue of Steve Biko, who would still work to remind us of the system of white supremacy, of apartheid, but he will also remind us not just that it happened and it continues to exist, but a symbol of Steve Biko instead of Cecil John Rhodes will remind us to fight. And it will remind us to continuously be active. And so it will remind us to raise our consciousness. And I think for me, that's more important than the trauma that we will experience by looking at Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes. But with Steve Biko statue or Winnie Mandela statue, we will see not only the reason for, or we will not only be reminded of what happened, but we will be motivated to continuously fight like they fought for the achievement of black dignity. So there's different ways, of memory. For instance, in Germany, you won't find statues of Hitler, etc., just in public randomly, right? They are locked up. In all those forms of memory are locked up in museums that the public has access to. They are written about in literature that people are taught, so that those same sins won't be repeated. And so, for me, I think that's more conducive.
Is Madiba? Is he on any of the currency in South Africa?
Yeah, he's all over. His face is all over the currency.
Oh, okay. I was going to mention Harriet Tubman. It's been my experience that racists, they do a really good job of co-opting symbols of black liberation. It's astounding the job that they can do worldwide with that sort of thing, where something that you think would be a reminder of black liberation and what we're supposed to be fighting for, and it can be turned around to, Madiba's on all the currency, Harriet Tubman is about to be on the currency over here. It is astounding the job that racists can do with those symbols. I did mention, I guess before I even get to Madiba, we had an Indian student. He was a part of some of the student protests. I said this, to my knowledge, has been going on for a while. This is not a new thing in terms of problems with white supremacy in the curriculum over there. But this was an Indian student, not black. And he had been a part of the protests and very accurate, very honest about the fact that black people were treated far worse than anybody else in South Africa, and that these fees and what's happening at the universities, that this has a way more detrimental impact on black students. Now, even within all that, he said that a part of his strategy in working in support of black people and working against white supremacy was to identify as a black person because of his political stances. And I said, to me, that does not seem logical. That doesn't seem like it's helping if you are acknowledging that you're not treated like a black person, you're not classified as a black person, people see you and they know that you're not a black person. That just doesn't seem accurate, number one, and I don't see how that is helping to solve a problem. And we kind of had a back and forth exchange where I don't agree, and moving forward, get another topic. Yeah. What is your thoughts on that?
I agree with you because, but let me just historicize it. So Steve Biko came up with this definition of black to include Indian people and a racial group in this country that we call colored people and black people, for them together. So he was for their solidarity and their unity, because all of these three groups of people, black, Indian, and colored, were all oppressed by the white supremacist system of apartheid. So he called for black unity, and he called for us to all identify as politically black because we are all oppressed by white supremacy. And so a lot of Indian people were part of the black consciousness movement. Everyone worked together within the black consciousness movement to overthrow, the apartheid system. But obviously the apartheid system oppressed us in different ways. Indian people were closer to whiteness and white privilege than the two other groups, colored and black people. Even colored people were closer to whiteness than us. So we were the majority of people that have been oppressed. So even now in post-apartheid South Africa, under black economic empowerment and affirmative action and employment equity, so the same definition is still used. So if you want to get a job, you have to tick a certain box, and Indian people still get access to educate, still are seen as previously disadvantaged. So I have a lot of young black people have seen the flaw with this, and the idea of, they call it Biko black. So Indian people are Biko black people. And so they have a problem with that because we don't recognize the privilege of Indians, even in post-apartheid South Africa. So a lot of the employment equity opportunities that have been received that was supposed to be for all black people, a lot of them have been received by Indian people because Indian people had some kind of privilege in apartheid South Africa, so they could go to university, etc., and have all of these, privileges that black people were denied. And so that allowed for them, when apartheid South Africa ended formally, they were able to get a lot of top jobs. They were able to socially and economically climb higher because they had the foundation already. And so black, even if you look at in terms of the employment statistics, the life expectancy, the job, the fact where they live, etc., a lot of Indian South Africans are very privileged to a sense. And so for me, I really don't agree with using that definition. I don't agree like you do that we should use that definition of black to classify Indian people as black today, because we fail to acknowledge their privilege.
For sure. Your point is well taken that in terms of in the system of white supremacy, if you're not white, you're going to be mistreated. Certainly Indians, coloreds, everyone who is classified as not white, you're going to be mistreated under this system. But I think it's extremely important just because if black people are going to be subjected to way more intense forms of terrorism, white supremacy, then that should be acknowledged. And I just don't think that us throwing labels to say that I'm a black person when you obviously do not have the same traumas and terrorism that black people face, I don't see where that's helpful in helping to get this problem solved. It's not even being truthful to the situation of our experience. I think it's also really important because when you did your segment on the stream and they were comparing the 1976 Soweto uprisings, student uprisings, with what's happening now when the student protests, fees must fall, roads must fall, I thought you made a really brilliant point about the culture in South Africa that is saturated with white supremacy is not tolerant of protest. And they were showing all these images of children in 1976 being slaughtered and killed. And you were saying that the same type of violence, maybe not people being slaughtered in mass numbers like what was happening in the 70s and during formal apartheid, but that same sort of violence happens now when students were out protesting about these fees. And I think you inserted as well the Marikana mining situation where you did have mass numbers of people being slaughtered and shot at for a long period of time and no real culpability. Just if you can kind of give more detail, more emphasis just on this continuum of violence against violent oppression against protest.
So, for instance, I think South Africa, apartheid South Africa, did not like political protest. It would just murder people, random people, black people, because they were gathering or they were having fun at a concert or whatever, because they would be so paranoid that they think every gathering of black people is for political dissent or trying to overthrow the system. So, when young black people were protesting peacefully on June 16, 1976, the police responded with violence. And like in other, protests, for instance, the Sharpeville massacre, where plenty of black people also were murdered for saying that they don't want, to carry past laws. That protest was led by a man called Robert Sobukwe that I would suggest everyone to find out or go read about him. Because, Steve Biko was inspired and mentored by Robert Sobukwe. And Robert Sobukwe is the most, the number one prisoner by the apartheid state. They called him the most dangerous man in South Africa. And he, even in Robben Island, he was given his own special cell and he was in isolation from the rest of the prisoners because, unlike Nelson Mandela, who was not, because they felt that his radicalism would pollute the minds of other prisoners and uprising would occur in the prison or something like that. He was a dangerous man. So Robert Sobukwe led that protest, and black bodies were killed in that protest in Sharpeville, in Soweto. So in post-apartheid South Africa, we've had incidences of police violence against protesters. Like you mentioned, the Marikana massacre was one of, those huge moments in our country, huge and painful moments in our country, because these people were fighting for a living wage. And they were fighting. I don't know if one of your listeners has watched a documentary called Miner Shot Down. I suggest that you all watch it. It details what happened on those few days in the lead to the Marikana massacre. And in that massacre, you see the collusion of white supremacy in terms of business, and it's international, white corporate money with the government, the black government, to collude to kill black bodies because black bodies were threatening the continuation of their wealth, an unjust form of gathering wealth. And so Marikana happened. Another, for instance, I also mentioned a man called Andries Tatane. And Andries Tatane was protesting, along with others, for water, for access to water. And he was shot and murdered, and by a cop he was not armed, and that like those scenes are available on YouTube, and it was a shock to the country. And so we see a lot of these incidences. But with fees must fall, a friend recently made the argument is that the South African government would not have shot black students with live ammunition. Although students were shot with rubber bullets, they were tear gassed, they were beaten. They didn't want to shoot them with live ammunition because of the image that would have. So black students, although a lot of black students at university are poor black students, but those who have access to the system, a lot of them, especially from institutions, elite institutions like UCT, come from privileged, backgrounds. Their fathers and mothers fought apartheid. Their fathers and mothers are leading, South African corporations and NGOs, etc., etc. So, and those students were protesting. So it would look very bad on their part to murder, elite students, because there would literally be an uprising, a second revolt. So they were very careful in the kinds of violence that they, inflicted on these students. So beyond the physical violence of shooting at them and tear gassing them and arresting them, they also suspended a lot of black students and expelled a lot of black students. As we speak right now, students in different universities in South Africa are still expelled from the universities for protest. And students who come from poor families, whose families sacrificed so much for them to have access to university, now have to go back to their townships without degrees, without any form of, of hope for getting employment, etc.
Wow. When mentioned earlier, we had the program in 2014 with some of the students that were organizing about white supremacy at the universities. He talked about how intensely repressive it was, that the students that were involved in organizing, that they were spying on their social media accounts and just making it very explicit that this is not something that they were going to encourage, and that you could face all sorts of reprisal for being engaged in this activity. Also, I'll take a brief minute to brag on the cows. I was going to ask you about it. Rihad Desai is the filmmaker who made Minor Shot Down. He was also a guest on our program in 2014, and excellent documentary. I would encourage folks to check out Minor Shot Down, as well as his other project, Bambaataa, 1906. That is one of the best films I've ever seen, talking about black people working against white supremacy and even resorting to counter violence. It is absolutely amazing. Bambaataa 1906. I think it's online if people are interested in checking it out. But we talked about both of those when he was on the broadcast. You encouraged us to check out material on Robert Sobukwe. Is there any books or anything in particular that you recommend that you think is a great resource?
So he does have an autobiography book. And if there is a tweet, he does have an autobiography that you can find. It's called "How Can a Man Die Better?" And even if you just Google his name, you will find, for instance, there's a website called essayhistory.org. So he has a page out there, so you can listen, read some of his speeches, etc., etc.
Beautiful. How can a man?
But the sad thing about Sobukwe that I want to highlight is that the apartheid government was so afraid of Sobukwe that we don't even have audio of his voice. So they destroyed audio of his voice. So we don't have audio of his voice because they destroyed anything so that we don't remember him. And even in post-apartheid South Africa, has not been celebrated for his role, because if we start seeing Robert Sobukwe and his ideas and what he advocated for, we will see the sellout project of this country, of how this country sold out black people. And we will have a high level of sensitization that will make us all realize that currently what we have as a democracy is not really a democracy. Black lives still don't matter. Black lives are cheap. Black people don't have their land in this country. So I would definitely encourage everyone to read Sobukwe's writing.
How Can a Man Die Better? Putting that on the reading list. We'll nab some of our callers. I see folks dialed in who have questions. If you have a question you would like to ask our guest joining us live from South Africa, Miss Simamkele Dlakavu, the number to dial 641-715-3640, and the code is 564943#. Press *6 if you have a question. Before I nab our callers, I was going through your Twitter feed, which is rather interesting reading for folks who are listening. Her Twitter feed is linked in the description, where you were chided by, looked to me like it was a white woman, where she said, "Are you prejudiced against white people? Let's get this straight. You call all white people bad, so you have no racial prejudice, assigning blame on every white person." She seemed like she was very upset and went on to write a few more things to kind of shake her finger at you for your views. So you don't like white people? You're prejudiced against white people?
So for me, I don't believe black people can be racist. Because I think, she deleted, I'm looking at the timeline, so she deleted all of the conversation. Her tweet to me. So I believe that, racism is a system of power. So, and racism is, I love, for instance, Bell Hooks' definition of racism, and I use it a lot. So is it possible for me to read it out for you?
Let's hear it.
Yeah, okay. So she writes, she says, "Why is it so difficult for many white folks, to understand that racism is oppressive, not because white folks have prejudice, English is not my first language, prejudicial feelings about blacks. They could have," for instance, and then she says, "they could have and show such feelings and leave us alone. But because it is a system that promotes domination and subjugation, the prejudicial feelings some blacks may express about whites are in no way linked to the system of domination that affords us any power to decisively control the lives and well-beings of white folks." So Bell, in this quote, differentiates between prejudice and the domination and power that white people have, right? So, for instance, if white people only if white people were only prejudiced against us, like she says, they could have such feelings and they can leave us alone, but they're not. So they don't only just dislike us for our being, but they control a system of domination that has enslaved us and colonized us and murdered us and oppressed us in so many ways. So even if black people can be prejudiced, for instance, I not wanting to be in white spaces, that does not compare to racism and the system of white supremacy, because I don't have the power to deny a white man a job. I don't have the power to for instance, if I'm a lecturer, to give a white person low marks even though they deserve good marks, like many white lecturers do in this country. I don't have the power to kill a white man and get away with it. But white people kill black bodies and get away with it daily. So I don't have the power to dominate a white person. So racism is a system of domination, and I don't have that as a black woman living in South Africa. And so for me, I really, with white people, and it's something that I've had to deal with. I don't have feelings of fondness for them. I don't try to befriend white people. Because white people will show you who they are constantly, even when you do try to befriend them, because I believe that all white people are racist. Some are racist consciously, and some are racist unconsciously. So your white friends who can be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you got a good mark." for the same test that you wrote, because unconsciously, although they might be friends with you, unconsciously they believe that you are black and therefore intellectually inferior, or how can you get a better mark than them? And so I'm aware of the unconscious racism as I am aware of the conscious racism. So it's very difficult for me to just sit by and watch them and just ignore it. Because a lot of black people ignore white people's racism, and I can't. So for me, the only form of protection is to just distance myself from them. But I do appreciate white people who are aware of their racism consciously and unconsciously, and I do have, comrades, white comrades who, for instance, who have been part of the Fees Must Fall movement, who have put their bodies on their line, who have sacrificed their white privilege to destroy it, because they understand even that the privilege that they have is unearned, and even the privilege that they have was on the backs of my people. So the white people that I respect are the white people who were protesting with us, who were getting tear gassed, who are willing to get suspended, who are every day in their lives, who are making whiteness uncomfortable, and who are working towards ending the system of white supremacy, and not just in ways that will not affect their privilege, but in ways that will affect their privilege. Because a lot of white people are like, oh, I gave a black person a job, or oh, I gave them a book, I paid for their school fees, without doing anything to end white supremacy that makes black people need for their school fees to be paid by you. So without committing any form of class suicide or of trying to end their own privilege.
Wow. Profound response. Profound. Your some of these white comrades who've been tear gassed and out on the front lines, as they say, working on some of these campaigns. Do you suspect that even they are racist, even as they are?
No. They know it.
Oh, they know it.
They know it. They are. And those, for me, those are the kinds of white people that I respect, right? Kind of respect, because they know that they're racist. They understand that they're racist, and they understand that it's something. For instance, racism, right? You can be, the best white person in your eyes, but you will always be racist. You will always be racist unconsciously, because racism. How do you expect people that have been taught all their lives that they are superior? They've been taught in the media, in school, by their families, by the government, by corporate. How do you expect them to shy away from those feelings? It was consciously, white supremacy is consciously embedded in all white people from the day that they are born. And so, and white people who, for me, that I respect, are white people that acknowledge that and are working towards dismantling white supremacy in ways that will end and crush their own, privilege. Some white folks, for instance, in South Africa, say, okay, I'll help build the boat to send us back to where we came from, for instance, jokingly. I'll supply, for instance, when we were protesting, they were like, no, I'm a privileged white person. I'm going to help supply milk for this protest, for instance, when we were tear gas, or all of those things. Because you're not only working towards charity and trying to appear as a good white, but you are challenging the system of white supremacy. So I don't like charity whites. I only respect white people that are trying to end and dismantle white supremacy.
They seem few and far in between.
Definitely.
My experience. I was going to make a request before I get our caller. Any of these white comrades of yours that you think, that the ones that you respect, that you feel like are doing things to destabilize white power and are out there getting tear gassed and all that, if you could send them our way, I absolutely love having white guests on the program. Do you know Jillian Shute?
I do.
Oh, okay. She's been on our program a couple times. She cursed me out. Just me asking her. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know. What did you say? What did you do?
Oh, okay. She's been on our program a couple times, and she cursed at me. The exchange was basically, she said one of our listeners was questioning her with suspicion and saying that I think that you are practicing racism in some of the things that you're doing and confusing black people about what it means to be white and how you all operate to maintain white power. And she said that she was paraphrasing his response, and she did a poor job. She said that this person who contacted her was basically saying that I'm trying to silence or dilute black anger. That I'm trying. That's what it was. The word tame. That I'm trying to tame black anger. And I stopped her and I said, "Hang on a second. Just that word tame. That right there. A white person talking about taming a black person. I don't know if we're talking about animals. That word is generally used when you're talking about animals. And there's a long history of white people comparing consciously, subconsciously, sometimes very explicitly comparing black people to animals. And I'm pretty certain I know the person that was talking to her that he wouldn't even speak in those terms. And I said, just the way that you're speaking right now, I think, could be you practicing white supremacy. And she got an attitude. She started cursing at me. She said that she didn't say the word tame. She kept interrupting me. And I said, hey, Miss Shute, this program is being recorded. We can just go back and listen to the archive, and we can hear exactly what you said. And she did use the word tame. It was exactly what I said. And she got really tacky and rude. And I said that your whiteness is showing. This is exactly she's married to a black person. She's married to a black male.
So many, so I've worked and interacted with Gillian in a few in a few environments, but also I have a problem with good whites like Gillian who believe that they have an authority over blackness and black people's pain, and who are constantly invited to discuss, and given platforms, jobs, opportunities to discuss, black pain and black anger. Because that is also a form of white supremacy. The fact that Gillian, for instance, will get, for instance, I was at a racism conference and she got to deliver a keynote, an address there. And so obviously being flown in and all of those, nice things. And for me, it speaks to their privilege. In fact, that you can have, for instance, she was also in Marikana shooting when it happened in her documentary, doing work, with black women in Marikana and other people in Marikana. And getting, that self-promotion and all of those things, social mobility and her ideas being accessed because of black pain, And so for me, I also, and that's the reason why I'm not excited about giving you these two white people's names and for them to be on your shows, because for me, I don't privilege white people that do what's humane. Ending white supremacy is your job because you've benefited from it. So I don't want to give them platforms or give them, or clap for them for doing what's right. And because, even in black spaces, white lefties will always be there trying to think that they have authority on black struggles. And because of their white skin, they will get more platforms, they will get book deals, they will get so much more than any black person would get for speaking about their own lived experiences. So it's fine. It's good that you cursed her. Oh, you didn't curse her out. She cursed you out, but you should have cursed her out as well.
I'm professional. At least that's my goal, to be professional, because I really make an effort with this program to reveal what it means to be white, and just to evidence what you said earlier, that to be white means you are a racist, and that we should not be thinking that, oh, Gillian Shute is so cool, this is the greatest white person ever, and she's doing all this work. That no, she's a racist, and that's that. Like, there's really nothing else. She's doing whatever she's doing, but she's practicing racism, white supremacy, and they can show you better than I can tell you. Let's just hear her be tacky in the way that she's talking about black people. And I think her black husband was sitting right next to her when this whole exchange went down. But her
husband was a part of the young people that were involved in the Soweto uprising. A friend mentioned something very funny, and I don't know if it's appropriate for this show. So she said that consciousness or blackness cannot be sexually transmitted. A lot of, white folk think that just because they are in interracial relationships or they birth black babies or et cetera, that they think that they have authority on blackness, and they get a ticket or permission to speak to black people in any kind of way that other white races don't, just because they are married or involved with black people.
Well, I know on this is something we talked with Jillian about as well as our most recent guest, Mr. Christopher Clark. He's a white male in South Africa. He's a writer. He was not born there. He was born in Britain, but he's been there now and writing. He has a black girlfriend and all this other stuff. But the position that I've taken is that it is one of the worst acts of white supremacy when a white person is sexually involved with any non-white person under the system of white supremacy. I think it causes mass confusion about racism, about what it means to be white. I think that white person when they're doing this, that they are deliberately taking advantage of someone who's in a weakened condition with the amount of brain trashing that we've been subjected to, that you were talking about earlier with the doll experiments and not even having access to black dolls, and just the contamination and trauma that is induced in the way that we think and being programmed to worship white people like Cecil Rhodes and what have you. It's totally exploiting someone who is in a weak condition. It's total exploitation in the worst kind of way. And then they can do exactly what you just said with Jillian Shoot. In my view, it is akin when they go and they reproduce and have this child. It's almost a form of slavery where now I can actually possess a black body as mine, literally, because I am the parent and I can do whatever I want. I don't teach them about racism. That's been an integral thing that I've seen with this pattern. Even if a white person has a non-white child, they do not give them accurate information about racism, which could be, life-saving information. I just think it's totally incorrect. That lets me all I need to know about this white person from the very beginning. If you're sexually involved with a non-white person, you're practicing racism, you have no interest in ending this, and it's just going to be a lot of tackiness. What's your view on
that's very, oh my gosh, that's very tricky. I don't agree with everything that you just said, because I think that it takes away the agency from black people. So the fact that they will always be dominated in the relationship, it takes away, a black person's agency. But it's true, like for instance, historically, so black women in particular had no choice but to be, sexually, in relationships with the white men. Because of slavery, white men would rape black women, not only in the U.S. and other parts of the world, but even here in our country, we have a deep history of slavery, and how slave owners would rape black women to assert their authority, and appease their nasty sexual desires, right? And so white men have that history of dominating, especially black women and black young boys in regards to sexual experiences. But today, for instance, in our country, I wrote an article last year. I'm going to DM you. Maybe you can share it with your listeners about building authentic interracial relationships. And there's a black woman that I know who isn't, and I don't know, I don't feel comfortable in discussing her relationship too, but she wrote a piece and she says that even though she's because sometimes we can't, choose who we love, right? I pray to God I will never be in that situation where I have to, have fallen in love with a white man. I don't think that's possible. But for those that do, I sympathize with them, especially if it's authentic kind of love, I sympathize with them. But that doesn't mean that you give white people a pass. It doesn't mean that you will not hold them into account. It doesn't mean that they'll just be those good whites because they are they've chosen to love me. So I'm just going to quote Watsisonke, this black woman who's a writer and activist who's married to a white man, wrote. She says, "I have chosen to love a white man. That doesn't give him or any other white man who exerts their privilege unjustly a free pass. In South Africa, as elsewhere, we've all got to do the work of changing the rules of the game, no exceptions." So yeah, that's my feeling towards that.
I got your article. I'm putting it on my Facebook page. I'm going to tweet it as well so listeners can check it out. Building authentic Interracial Relations. So if you want to check it out, it's on the Facebook page right now. That word agency is fascinating. Our guest, Christopher Clark, this white male, who also cursed me out, he's in a sexual relationship with a black female, and he used the same defense. He said that you're taking away agency from black people who are engaged in these arrangements. And my response to that, because that is a popular word here in the States as well when talking about racism, agency, my response to that would simply be either it's true or it's not, that you have a large number of black, and when I say large, I mean the vast majority of black people who are confused about racism, white supremacy. Either that's true or it's not. If it's true, then agency is compromised in terms of our ability to make accurate decisions in the system of white supremacy that are going to help solve this problem. The fact that this problem has been here such a long time, to me, overwhelmingly, it's painfully obvious that we do not have an accurate understanding about how this system is working, because we have not been able to solve this problem. Either, just at the end of the day, either it's true or it's not, that we have still got some deficiencies in our understanding of white people and how we're relating to them to go about solving this problem.
Yeah, it's true, and like I said, it would be very confusing to be in a relationship with a white person, but I don't judge, the people that do. Sometimes I do if the relationship is compromising our struggle, but I don't see, like I said, for instance, Sisangem Simang, who writes about it does not give him a free pass, right? Racism, white supremacy is discussed in their household, etc., etc. But for me, like my friends and I always joke, is like when it's time to take back the land, in South Africa, it's time to take back our stolen land, or maybe a revolution is happening, or something like that. And then we laugh and be like, we don't want any black person or one of our black friends telling us that, no, leave my white person alone. Don't take his land. He's a good white. We don't want to have those problems. So rather, let's avoid it. So we don't get there. So we're not trying to soothe your feelings or anything when it's time to hit the boat.
If Robert Sobukwe, if he was married to a white woman, would that have any impact on how you view his life and legacy?
Yes, Shem. A deep impact, and luckily he did not.
Right on. I guess the only other thing I'll say, because that comes up too, I think that's a popular bit of rhetoric that you can't help who you fall in love with. In my view, it is immensely false, because we already discussed the doll studies that are worldwide. You can't tell me that doesn't have a huge impact in terms of how we see white people and how we see black people.
Definitely. No, definitely. I know many black people in this country even who go out to particularly have, white relationships with white people. I know them, I've seen them, they are in my life. Who particularly go to have relationships with white people because they want their kids to be mixed race, to have what they say is good hair, etc., and for social mobility. So, but for me, it's very, because the thing is, we don't. For me, I don't engage in this project of ending white supremacy because I don't see white people as human. Or because I don't ever, want to be in a space where I could love other people, white people, for their humanity. I'm in this in this project because I have, for instance, in Steve Biko, he speaks about the idea of non-racialism, and even Sobukwe speaks about one day I hope we can achieve the idea of seeing people for who they are inside instead of the race, because also race is a social construct. But we can never reach that point until we solve until we dismantle white supremacy, until we resolve all of these problems of land, of, for instance, problems of just white domination, white privilege, and white oppression. We can't reach that point without without this. But in me, when I speak to, for instance, in activist situation where you both fighting white supremacy and some other person is white, where you both understand, what white supremacy means. It's hard for me to judge those people. It's hard for me when they fall in love. It's very hard for me. But I say to them, when the time comes for the vote, when the time comes for us to take back our land, I don't want to hear anything about my husband. No, he's a good white. I don't want to hear it, because he will be treated the same way as we will treat other white people at that particular time.
Ashe. Before I don't judge any black person who's engaged in these arrangements. I view them as a victim. I do judge the white person, though, because I've just concluded they are not confused. They know what they're doing, and they know what they're doing is massively incorrect, and it is an act of racism. Feelings aside, I do judge the white person for being engaged in a massive act of racism, white supremacy. The caller in Canada, no less. Did you have a question for our guest, Ms. Simamkele Dlakavu? You should be with us, our caller in Canada.
Hello, Ms. Dlakavu. Hello, Gus. Just want to say, really loved all the things you said. I just completely ecstatic. So I have I think I have 4 or 5 questions. I'm going to go one by one. I remember when I was in high school, I had a law teacher who liked Nelson Mandela, but disliked Winnie Mandela. I just wanted to know if you knew, why is it that white people tend to not like Winnie Mandela? Because I don't know the historical background of South Africa very well.
Great question. Thank you for it. It's evident even here in our country. White people hate Winnie Mandela and love Nelson Mandela. And so, for instance, during their divorce, there's lots of conspiracy around it. And so someone once wrote, I don't remember the article, that said, so when Nelson Mandela was negotiating with white people and the white apartheid government, is that they said that you could never have Nelson Mandela going into those meetings in the morning to like the afternoon with the white man to negotiate the terms of this freedom, and have him go back to a radical woman like Winnie Mandela. Winnie Mandela was a radical black woman who didn't care about white sensibilities, who wasn't scared of white people and wasn't afraid to express it. She wasn't afraid of engaging in violence, because she believed that white people are engaging us with violence. Violence is a form of self-defense, And Winnie Mandela, who wanted black people to get their land back, who wanted all of this historical injustice to be undone. Winnie Mandela, who saw what was going on in the negotiation settlement for the joke that it was, for the farce that it was. You could not have her going back, this writer says, going back home. We couldn't have Nelson Mandela going back home to a force like Winnie Mandela, who's going to remind him of the fact that actually the direction that you're taking in this country to is not the best one. We can do better for black people. We can do better for black dignity. And so Winnie Mandela, even now in post-apartheid South Africa, she has been clear in her critique of this dispensation, and she's been uncompromising to that. And white people generally don't like, especially this is gendered and racialized. A lot of white people didn't like Assata Shakur, for instance, because Assata Shakur, for me, Shakur is in line with Winnie Mandela. She's radical like Winnie Mandela, and she was unapologetic about her love for blackness and for her hatred of white supremacy. And white people generally don't like black women like that.
Oops, our caller in Canada, that answered your question. Do you have another one?
Yes, that was a good answer, and I have another one. What's it like, I guess, because you mentioned dealing with family members who are very addicted to an integrationist philosophy, because in Canada, unlike South Africa or America, none of our discourses, the word here is multiculturalism, that's what comes up a lot here, and there's no critique of that idea. It's always, every time we do something, we must have white people involved. There's like this no real desire for seeing black people just doing things for black people. So what's it like dealing with that on a personal level?
Definitely, it's evident here, as I mentioned, and it's difficult. And even, for instance, with a political party, for instance, I'm a member of a political party called the Economic Freedom Fighters. It's very pro-black. It's very unapologetic about its pro-black stance, and it questions integration because it doesn't result in black justice, and a lot of the responses, not only from white people but black people, has been the EFF is racist. The EFF doesn't like white people. The EFF is not for the kind of country that Nelson Mandela envisioned. Yes, we're not for that kind of country. We're not for an integration in a country that privileges integration, that will continuously make sure that black people are at the bottom. So it's definitely like that.
Okay, I have one. Thank you for answering, and I have one last question. What is the importance of Pan-Africanist thinking for black movements globally, in your opinion?
It's definitely important, because white supremacy is not a system that's evident only in my country and in your country, or it's evident everywhere in the world. And white supremacy was deliberate in trying to dismantle Africa and Africans. So Africans in the diaspora and Africans in the diaspora who were kidnapped from their homes and taken onto slave ships and murdered and made to work in plantations. So for me, we cannot engage in a program of black liberation without acknowledging that context, without acknowledging how black people throughout the world are all interconnected, and how white supremacy has worked to make sure black lives don't matter everywhere in the world, and how white supremacy has also been invested in the project of making Africa poorer, so that they can steal from Africa, so that they can loot and make it, and make it ungovernable in that sense, or because it benefits them. Because, like many have said, war is profitable, and war is profitable for the West. And so, for me, Pan-Africanism is really the only response that we have. And all the people that inspire me, Steve Biko, Robert Sobukwe, Malcolm X, Patricia Hill Collins, Asata, they've all, and many others, they've all been clear the fact that Pan-Africans, whether living on the continent or in the diaspora, need to unite in order, Bob Marley, Africa Unite, for us to properly respond to the system of white supremacy.
Appreciate that, caller in Canada. I think this is Thomas in New York. Thomas in New York, did you have a question for our guest? Again, Ms. Simamkele Dlakavu. Did you have a question, Thomas in New York?
Yes, I do. Good evening, Gus. Good afternoon, Gus. Good afternoon to you. I don't know what time it is here. I'm not even going to mess up your name by trying to say it. So good afternoon, ma'am. I have two questions for you. The first question, and I've noticed that during the course of the show that you used the term white privilege a lot. Do you think it would be more accurate and more impactful if you took out the privilege and replaced it with power?
So I think it's both. It's white privilege and power. I think why would you? I want to ask you a question. Why would you? Because I think for me both work together and are both reflective of the system of white supremacy. But I also, because for me, what I mean by privilege is that in South Africa, white people and other parts of the world are privileged. So in a sense, materially, socially privileged. So they have better healthcare, they have better jobs, they have even better life expectancy. So, and this privilege is not earned privilege, it's unearned privilege. And so that's why I use the word. But I'm fascinated to know, why would you substitute white privilege with white power?
I find white privilege to be a word. Well, privilege is something that, is a good thing. You get a privilege when you're in school, and the teacher has to leave the classroom, and she gives the student the privilege of standing in front of the class and put right in the name of the people who talked or whatever on the board. This is way more than privilege. That to me is them getting off easy. This is white power. Every privilege that they have came as the result of a violence and terrorism of black people. And white people don't seem to like to be put in the frame of white power, because it has a connotation, especially here in the States, of being like a white supremacist group, like the KKK or the Nazis. So they will usually say white power. So when you use that, it's sort of like a blind indictment on them for what they really are, racist.
Definitely, I get your argument, and I definitely feel that it's valid. Definitely, but I just want to say that it's here in South Africa. I can never just say white privilege, but I need to also maintain that it's unjust privilege, like you said. It's not earned privilege; it's unjust privilege. So it's just to highlight for me the way that I use it. For instance, white people in South Africa like to justify the fact that they have all of the things that they have. They like to justify it, to say that they worked hard for it. They work smart. They we are lazy and all of those things. So I use that word to remind them, this is unjust privilege. You have all of these things, but you didn't earn these things. Your people murdered people. They stole people's land for the things that you have. You didn't earn them at all. So that's the reason why I use it.
I know Thomas in New York City had one more question, which we'll definitely let him get in. I just wanted to add on that, because I regularly discourage the use of the term white privilege, because I think that's just one of the ways that white people are very deceptive with the use of language. I also think that it makes it very passive when whites talk about racism, as they don't have to do anything. They just wake up in the morning and they got all these goodies. They got free gift cards to do all the shopping that they want, and they got free gas cards so they can get petrol, and all of this stuff just appeared. They got, 100,000 Rand just magically appeared, and they didn't have to do anything, and nothing could be further from the truth. If you are a white person anywhere in the world, you are expected to actively participate in maintaining, expanding white power worldwide forever. It is not something that is passive. And I mean, especially in an area like South Africa, where you don't even have that many whites, you have got to be actively involved in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean that you have to be out protesting and calling people kafir every day, but you are expected to be. And it's been my experience, white people will let you know when you are in violation of your duties as a white woman, white man. I think using words like white power, white supremacy are much more accurate in describing what they're doing. It's not just privilege, it's power that we're talking about. And I submit that is earned, that they have done a lot of dastardly things to get the power that they have over black people worldwide, if that makes sense.
Definitely, it makes sense, and I've learned something today. Thank you so much. So I will also be conscious in how I use the word white privilege now, and I'll definitely be substituting it with white power. Thank you.
Thomas, you had another question?
Yes, sir. My second question. Thank you for chiming in, Gus, because you so eloquently put exactly what I was trying to say. Oh, my second question is South Africa. Is sentiments of anger or of a dissatisfaction by as per the youth of the Black South Africans? Or do they ever feel like the white people there, their ancestors were weak for letting them come and take their land and rule over them for all these years? Is there ever that sentiment, or do you guys kind of look at them like, they had no choice in the matter? Hopefully, I worded that right.
I think that's I think that's a relevant question, because I don't think it's not only a question for us. For instance, I've seen this question pop up also in reference to slavery in the U.S. and all of those, and even in West Africa when it happened. So white people, for instance, this comes in with the politics of memory, right? White people will, when they discuss colonization, slavery, and all of those things, they will like telling us narratives of Black people being powerless, not revolting, accepting slavery, accepting colonization, accepting the fact that their land was stolen, but they will not tell the stories of Black revolt. They will not share, for instance, when white people first came to South Africa. I'm from a province in South Africa that is at the tip of the coast. So it's called Eastern Cape. So white people arrived in Western Cape, and Eastern Cape is next door to Western Cape. So it's like close to each other. So white people, the first encounter white people had in this country in terms of war, they had it with my people, the Xhosa people. And there's a book that I'd like to share with you guys. I'm Googling it right now so that you have it, called Frontier Wars. And this book details how Xhosa people, right, were able to, without guns, without all of this, the violent weapons that white people had, without all of those things, were able to keep away white people and kill white people and win wars against white people for over 100 years. And so this book details the frontier wars, and those are the stories that we don't hear about, and how white people, reached out to Europe to enforce these white supremacist weaponry, etc., give them more bodies, etc., because they were not winning the conquest. And those are the stories that we don't hear about, because they're trying to push a narrative about that Black people don't revolt, that they allow themselves to be just oppressed without fighting. But Black people did fight, like they fought when slavery was happening and during slavery. And that's why I'm very excited about The Birth of the Nation, right? The movie that I hope my optimism, doesn't get destroyed or tainted. I hope this movie does, justice. It hasn't been out here. I haven't watched it to show even in the U.S. how Black people in the U.S. Revolted against white supremacy. And so for me, I think in our generation, we see it holistically. We see it that it was not just that we lost, but we still see that we fought and were able to hold on to our land and beat white people in many wars without weapons, without reinforcement from Europe. Without that, we were able to keep them away from our land for so long. But we couldn't. We did lose eventually, but it's very important to highlight that we did revolt. And in other parts of the world, Black people have revolted.
That answer your question, Thomas in New York? Oh, don't know if he hit his mute button or... Okay. might be in a noisy area. We can circle
Yes,
back.
answer my question. I hit my mute button and I couldn't find my phone because I have my headphones on. But that definitely answered my question, and I wouldn't expect anything too constructive to come out of Birth of a Nation. If it was going to be constructive, white people would not let it come out. And I'll leave my line. Thank you.
Sure.
For sure. I almost feel like I'm giving you a spoiler. The black male filmmaker for The Birth of a Nation, Nate Parker, he is married to a white woman. Maybe that'll have some bearing, maybe it won't. But
really?
Unfortunately. Unfortunately.
No, I was so excited for this film. Okay.
The caller at 5640. I'm going to still watch it too. I know we talked about it. Our listeners are looking forward to it, but I have lower expectations.
Yeah, because I'm like, it got like white people are loving it. I'm like, I'm confused. I was confused in the beginning. I'm like, why do white people like it?
Yeah, anything that white people get excited about, I am immediately. That's the words of the great Malcolm X. Anything that makes white people happy, I am immediately suspicious. The caller at 5640, did you have a question? Our guest, Simamkele Dlakavu, you should be with us.
Hi, yeah, welcome to the guest. I missed most of the first part, so I wanted to ask the guest what is her ethnicity and what's the original language?
Okay, I'm black. And I'm Xhosa. So, yeah.
So do you speak the Xhosa language as well?
I do. I grew up in rural and township areas in Eastern Cape. I speak Xhosa. I speak Zulu as well, and I understand Tswana, Pedi, and Setswana.
That's wonderful. Wonderful, and I'm glad you're able to keep your culture, because as you're aware, a lot of Black Americans aren't aware of their cultural or ethnic heritage. So I'm glad you're preserving that, and I pray that it continues. But I wanted to ask, how do the Asian Indians and the other Asians that are ethnically Chinese, ethnically Japanese or whatever, or Korean and colorids, how do they treat you and other blacks in South Africa? Because to me, they tend to be the same in terms of holding white supremacist beliefs and also in how they mistreat black people. So I just wanted to ask what your experience has been with them, and if you feel that they hold on to the same white supremacist beliefs and actions.
So it's anti-blackness, right? The apartheid system was very deliberate in sowing anti-black sentiments, not only through white people, but with, for instance, Indians in South Africa, Asians, and with colored people. So anti-blackness, even in media, in books. For instance, I know even in the U.S. you had stereotypical controlling images of black people. Here we had that too. So black people were lazy, black people didn't smell good. They were just nasty people. So, and all of those sentiments were sowed in not only in white people, but Indian people, and Asian people. So there is that anti-black racism that's there. And I've seen it. I've experienced it. And that's why for me, earlier in the conversation, we were having a discussion around how Indian people in South Africa define as black, and how I also have a problem with that, because they're not recognizing their superiority, and how, for instance, apartheid, even under apartheid, they were allowed certain, liberties that we were not. So I've definitely experienced, those anti-black sentiments.
And are you friends with any Indians or Asians or others, colorids or people that are not black, but that are not white either? Do you consider them friends? Do you have those that are friends?
I do have, particularly colored people. So because for me, it's colored people. It's hard to consider them as an other, because although they are classified as an other, I went to school with colored people. We were in the same townships. We lived in, we had the same crappy township education. We lived in the same crappy township homes built by the Apartheid government, not developed by the ANC government. And so for me, although there's a difference in terms of racial classification with them, I don't see it, because even statistically in South Africa, the colored people and black people are at the bottom. So in terms of life expectancy, in terms of access to education and healthcare and all of those things. So we grew up together. So they are my friends, they are my family, because also have lived, coming from the Eastern Cape, where slavery, and Eastern and Western Cape, and slavery was so rife, and the rape of black women was so rife, is that even our skin tones are the same. They are part of my family. You know what I mean? So it's very hard to see that as an other. And to answer your question, yes, it's more difficult with and Indian people. I am friends with some who are my comrades. Who are also for the end of white supremacy, but who are also acknowledging their own anti-black sentiments. But it's very difficult to form relationships with white people, and I'm not interested in forming them.
Oh, thank you. And then my last question. Is how are the black albinos treated over there? Do they fear for their physical safety given the news of the atrocities committed against them in neighboring African countries, or how are the black albinos treated? And also too, in terms of their white color, pink skin color, are they treated better than the visibly looking black people there?
Yeah. I don't know if I can adequately answer your question, because it's not my lived experiences, and it'd be uncomfortable to claim an authority, over, or a really good understanding over their lived experiences. But to say that in South Africa, it's not as evident in other parts of the continent. The killing of albinos for traditional practices. I don't know what other uses they have. It's not as relevant. I mean, it's not as prevalent in our country. But growing up, we had, albinos and black people in my township. We played. It was like we saw the difference, but it wasn't made out for you to be. It wasn't a conscious thing to differentiate. For instance, there wasn't a deliberate campaign growing up for me to say, "Ooh, these people are like this. You should be afraid of them," or they were hunted down. It was not like that in my township. But like I say, I can't, speak adequately about it, because it's not my lived experience. I might think that my friend Noktula didn't experience it when we were growing up, but because I have a privileged position in this sense, because I'm not albino, she might have seen it differently, because she's the one who experienced it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just speaking of what you might have observed, that's all. But thank you so much, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The caller 2648. Did you have a question for our guest, Ms. Simamkele Dlakavu?
Yes. I wanted to ask the sister, has there been any effort to get reparations for the South Africans for the tyranny of white supremacy?
there hasn't, and that's and that is the saddening thing, and that's why a lot of young black people are looking for alternatives, political alternatives where we will get reparations. We can't even get our land back, and so it's none. For instance, Desmond Tutu, a few years ago, Desmond Tutu is also held up like Nelson Mandela because he was in charge of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So a few years ago, he made a kind of a radical stance, and white people came for him when they loved him so much. But until he threatened their privilege, unearned privilege and power, they came for him. So he asked that South Africa must think about a white tax, taxes for white people as a form of reparation. We will use that taxes to build schools, etc., etc. And white people came down on him so badly. And you see how white people only love you and praise you when you don't threaten them and their power. And once you do threaten them, they will come for you. And Desmond Tutu stopped talking about it quickly because white South Africans came for him.
Okay. I have one more question. What's the deal with the diamond mines? Are there still any slaughtering of Africans in the diamond mines? Or if they're being caught with diamonds, with the beards and all of that? Well, what's going on with that?
Yeah, so our mineral wealth, diamonds, platinum, gold are still in the hands of white people, white international, corporations that are not even listed in South Africa. They're listed in London, and we've had miners in South Africa being killed, heavily underground, who have developed sicknesses that these companies aren't even willing to pay for give them reparations, or once they are ill and can't work because of working in these mines. So we don't own our mineral wealth. Black people don't own the mineral wealth, diamonds, gold, platinum, and we have, I think, about, for instance, in South Africa, 90% of the world's platinum reserve, and we don't own it.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
But
it's because also, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that it's also because white capitalism does a smart thing, right? So they are able to give a few black people crumbs in the system. So, for instance, we have a miner here who's among who's the richest black man in South Africa, who is in mining. His name is Patrice Motsepe, and he's a billionaire. And so we have, for instance, another man. His name is Cyril Ramaphosa. He's the deputy president of South Africa, who was also involved in the shooting of workers in Marikana. He sat on the board of that company, Lonmin, that those miners were working for. And because he has ANC ties, he was able to put pressure on the police commissioner to go handle the situation, which resulted in the killing of miners. So white supremacy is able to pick a few blacks and just give them a few crumbs, so to silence other black people up, and for us to pretend that the system, is working for some black people. And so there are a few black people who have been able to own mines or have been given board positions or shares in these mines, but it's nothing. They own nothing. They own a fraction, crumbs of that mining sector.
Yeah, that sounds very, very, very familiar. But that's all I wanted. And salute to the cows. Salute to you, sister. And keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ashe. We had two final callers who wanted to get their questions in. I think this is Roz. Roz, did you have a question for our guest, Miss Simamkele Dlakavu?
Yes, greetings to you. Good afternoon, Gus, and good afternoon to you, Ms. Dlakavu. How are you today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I had about 3 questions for you. It's great to hear you, and I love to hear what you have to say. Thank you for being on the show. My first question is a 2-part question. Have you ever read the works of Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, or Dr. Marimba Ani? And are you familiar with the concept of white genetic annihilation?
Of what?
White genetic annihilation?
No. I'd love for you to tweet me all those names if you can, or because it's very important that I think I haven't heard of the people that you are referring to, and it's sad for me not to know them. And I was speaking earlier about for instance, the call for decolonization in South Africa. So we learn more about European authors, political theorists, and scholars than we learn on the thoughts of Black people in the continent or even in the diaspora. So young Black people have to make a deliberate effort to find, other Black scholars and Black activists and writers from the diaspora because we're not taught that. So if you keep me the names or whatever, and I'll definitely put it on our reading list, because we have a few reading lists, and I'll share an article with you about what Black students are doing to decolonize literature.
All right, thank you. I actually don't have a Twitter page, but maybe Gus can send you those names on my behalf. We've talked about them and to them on quite a few occasions, and they're, I would say, 3 of the most important African scholars to be aware of in regards to getting a really holistic understanding of how white supremacy operates on a global level and how white people function collectively exactly the same, even though it might be applied in different ways in different parts of the world. So I think those 3 people will be very, very constructive as far as adding to your understanding of the system of white supremacy.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and thank you too. Also, the concept of genetic annihilation is something that Dr. Welsing, Frances Cress Welsing, brought up in her book, The ISIS Papers, and it basically speaks to the fact that no matter where Black people are located, we have not been able to solve the system of white supremacy because we do not understand, a lot of us don't understand, that the reason it's not ending is because of their fear of white genetic annihilation, meaning if all of us were to get along and basically start to procreate with one another, anytime a white person has an offspring with a non-white person, the result is a non-white child. So essentially, genetically, they will cease to exist if they were to stop practicing racism. And that's why it has such a powerful way of refining itself every time Black people come up with different solutions to try and counter it. So that's a brief synopsis of it, but her book will really, really bring it to you in a way that's a lot deeper than me. Thank you so much. And then my next question was, how many people would you say, or would you say in your estimation in South Africa, understand racism as a global system versus something that is local to them in their part of the continent?
I don't know, and I don't want to estimate because I don't think that would be fair. But I can speak about my my own experience. Yeah, not many here in my personal experience, because we are taught that racism is, for instance, in South Africa, how apartheid has. We have not been taught the institutional and structural might of racism. We've been taught the fact that, for instance, we couldn't sit on benches with white people, we couldn't move around, we couldn't go to school with them, but we were not taught about the structural stuff, about how they took control of the economy and how it depossessed people's land, and how they created a monopoly over industry and attacked Black industries and all of those things. And I remember when I learned about slavery, I did not know like, I think I learned about slavery when I was 10 years old, or I didn't learn about it from a young age, because I always wondered, why are these black people in America? Why are these black people that I see on my TV? How did they get there? And all of those questions, and I never understood. And then my mom told me one time that they were sent on ships. I'm like, how? Don't lie. Really? People would do that? Send other people, kill them, like put them on ships and all of those things. And it's when I got older, I really understood the system of white supremacy at a global level and at a structural level. And going to, and even here in South Africa, we don't even speak about slavery a lot. There's a book called, by a professor here in South Africa called Pumla Gola, and she writes a book, she has a book out called What Slavery Means to Me. And so even in our history, as South Africans, we only learn about apartheid. We don't even realize that there was a thing before apartheid called colonialism, and even before that we also had slavery, and how that system was perpetuated everywhere else in the world. So we don't learn enough about that, and because also it's a part of the kind of political project that white people and along with the black elite are trying to affirm, is that they don't want to remind us of our past, because they will make us see that our past is not really different to our present.
Wow, thank you. And my final question is, what does traditional African culture and spirituality play in contributing to the struggle for African liberation? And thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you so much. So it's very weird, and like your question is something that I'm dealing with right now. This idea of African culture and African spirituality. So in Zimbabwe, my friend is doing a thesis on the Zimbabwean revolution, the first and second one, what they call them Chimurengas, and how spirituality formed a huge part of that, in terms of making sure people were spiritually secure. And today, for instance, when colonialism happened, for instance, it didn't come only with the gun. A lot of people make the analogy that it came with the Bible as well. The Christian Bible. So missionaries came, for instance, to South Africa to teach people about this white Jesus and white God, who's here to save you from your old ways. You are sinners, etc., etc. So to be pure, you need to be pure and to be loving and to not to go to hell. You need to follow this, this way. And South Africa is a very Christian country. I think over 70% of South Africans are Christians, and so as we know that the way Christianity is taught and practiced validates white supremacy in so many ways. And so currently, I'm dealing with what African spirituality means to me, because in South Africa we have a thing called sangomas. Sangomas is like a traditional healer. So people that, for instance, if you're sick, not only physically but emotionally and spiritually, who guide you, who connect you, who help you connect with your ancestors, who help even physically heal you. And so we have, those traditional healers in the country. Although they are compared to, they're not as validated as white medicine, as white doctors. They are sometimes branded as witches, as evil people who practice witchcraft. But I just recently found out that I too have a calling, where I have to, go and practice and just go and be, secluded somewhere I don't even have the answers right now of how it's going to work out, because I've never experienced this before. But it's been affirmed, and I have dreams, etc., etc. And my friend, and it's been happening to a lot of young people in my activist spaces. And my friend made a joke and said, "I think the ancestors are equipping us spiritually to take down white supremacy," and it was a joke, but I think it resonated with me and spoke to me, because I don't think that our struggle is just about the physical, it's a spiritual war. The fight against white supremacy is a spiritual war, and that's why they work so hard to remove us from our land and to remove us and disconnect us from our ancestors and from our belief systems, because they know in order to colonize a people, you have to colonize them holistically, spiritually, mentally, physically. And so a lot of young people are getting spiritual callings and spiritual gifts, and I don't know what it means yet. I don't know what my own calling means, but it's something that I'm reconnecting with.
Appreciate that, Roz. Let's see, our last caller chimed in with the question. The caller at 9828. Did you have a question for our guest, again, Miss Simamkele Dlakavu?
Yes, I did. I had two questions. Let me get off speakerphone. Sorry about that. I had two questions. One is dealing with white supremacy, and the other question is about South Africa before the whites came. And I start with the question with about white supremacy in South Africa first. I'm in just in America, the access to the little information that I have through the internet or, stuff like that. I hear about the United States of Africa, and a lot of people were talking about it, like a few years ago, but it's been about 5 years since I even heard anybody even talk about it. But I'm wondering, is that even the logical goal for me to even look forward to, from here? Is that on the minds of people on the continent?
That's a good question. So the idea of the United States of Africa was pioneered heavily by people like Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, and for instance Gaddafi from Libya, and other African statesmen and women and activists who felt that Africa, because when colonialism happened, they carved up the map of Africa for the Portuguese, for the British, for the French, so all our colonialists, and they carved up this map of Africa and divided us in ways that didn't make sense. So some people could be from the same community and from the same tribe, for instance, but they were divided because colonialists decided that no, this country should start here and this country should start here. And Africa trades more has more external trade, so it trades more with the West and China more than it trades with itself, with each other. And the transport systems it's easier for me to fly, for instance, to the U.S. than to fly to Gabon or Guinea or in different parts of the continent. And it was designed that way, right? We weren't meant to unite. We were not meant to be a unified entity. We were meant to be colonies and extensions of France, extensions of the Portuguese, extensions of the Europeans who are colonialists. So the thing is, for a united Africa to happen, it will not benefit those that control power in the world, not just in Africa, because Africa at war with itself, Africa at war with each other is not profitable. It's not profitable for the people that are taking platinum. It's not profitable from the people that are taking, tires. For instance, I heard. So Liberia gives the world what it needs to produce tires, but does not own a tire manufacturing plant, because everything is extracted and exported for people like Firestone, these kinds of multinational companies. So in Africa United, in Africa that works for itself is not profitable. So whoever, and we've seen all the leaders that have tried to implement that program of action have been murdered. So Thomas Sankara, Libya, Gaddafi, all of them have been murdered. And anyone. So I'm hoping that young people speak about a united Africa, Africans for Africans, Africans in Africa and Africans in the diaspora. That is who Africa belongs to. But there's no political will on the people that have power to make that a reality, I think.
So you're saying the people that have the power to make that a reality are not really serious about making that a reality?
Definitely, because it's dangerous to try and have that reality. Is dangerous, and you will be murdered.
But could I ask you a question? Could I ask you a question? But the fact that it is dangerous for us to have that reality, wouldn't that even be a bigger motivating factor to make that reality true? Because that's showing us that it'll work for us. I could definitely.
I agree with you. It's definitely, and that is the vision. That should be what we are all working for. But the people that can do that are the people on the ground. The leaders will not do that for us. Political leaders who are comfortable with the status quo, who benefit from the status quo, will not achieve that for us. But ordinary Africans on the diaspora, we are the ones that are going to achieve that, not the people in power, not leaders. We are, by rising up and making sure and demanding that change, we are going to achieve it.
And to get to my... Right? What you say, ma'am?
No, I was saying that they can't kill all of us. Like, for instance, if everyone devolves on the ground, they can't kill all of us. They can kill individual leaders like they did, but they can kill everyone.
Oh, yeah, they can chop the head off, but like you said, if it's a snake with many heads, you know what I'm saying? They can't stop the whole movement. You see what I'm saying? And I see that globally, like you said, what's going on over there in Africa. How some people get in power and they kind of forget about the regular people. And the same things happen over here where some people get in power and they kind of forget about the regular people. And like you said, people on the ground have to do more. And myself, I definitely have to improve 1,000% on what I'm doing. You see what I'm saying? But to my second question that I wanted to ask you about is really about before the whites came to Africa, or even before any outsiders came to Africa. How close are you to Swaziland?
We're very close. It's next door. It's one of our bordering countries.
Okay. Now, I was doing some reading on the internet, and I came across this guy. His name. It'll come up to me, but he talks about Adam's calendar. He talks about a lot of the stone circles and the oldest calendar on the face of the planet that is in South Africa, and they talk about like a large civilization that had ruins, stone circles all over South Africa. And they say those ruins were even bigger than the United States. You know, it was landmass, you know, where they were spread across. But I just want to know, like, when I listen to him, I even forgot the guy's name because I don't even listen to him that much no more because I couldn't take his research serious. You see what I'm saying? Because he'll start talking about aliens and things like that, but I'll be looking at people on caves shooting bows and arrows, but he'll be talking about aliens. And I said, well, these people were that, but I'm sure the aliens didn't come down here and do this and then just still left them with bows and arrows. So I'm thinking that, you know, the indigenous people did this off their own brain and their own intellect. So I couldn't really get into this guy, but are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I am, and I was actually looking for some referencing for you. So there have been many, you know, great kingdoms in the continent. The first university in the world was in Africa, you know, and we've, for instance, the previous president of South Africa has tried to save those ruins. Where you can still see, you know, some of the infrastructure, etc. And then I don't know if maybe you were referring to the kingdom called Mapungubwe Kingdom. I've just sent it to online so that you can have access to some of the readings.
And what is it called again?
Mapungubwe.
How do I spell that? How would I spell that?
Okay, so it's MAPUNGUBWE.
WE.
Yeah. So there's so many referencing. So I sent out the link. Maybe we can tweet it out. A link with referencing of other, like it's on South African History Online, and it's just a brief summary, and then there are other, you know, referencing to it, and there's also a few documentaries that you can access on them.
Okay, now when like a lot of the information on it, when I'm still trying to get this guy's name who is doing this work. But they're always trying to connect it to the aliens. It's serious work on it, right?
Really, I'm laughing because I've never heard about aliens. I've never heard.
Yeah, this guy. When I came across the information, every time he talked, like he won't talk about African people. He'll try to talk about all of this, you know, beautiful architecture and stuff like this, and he'll try to connect it to like people from outer space, and he'll talk about, you know, rubbish, you know, the Anunnaki and all like that type of stuff. You see what I'm saying? But that's why I was glad I was speaking to someone from South Africa, so I could, you know, like you said, I wrote the name down, but I want to see it from the indigenous people perspective, and I'm thinking that it probably will be more down to earth and realistic type of explanation to how all of this stuff came about.
Yeah, and I also just sent you sent through a link to the history of the Kingdom of Mali and the city of Timbuktu, and then that's where you learn more about, you know, the universities that were there in the 14th century.
Now, I'm familiar with that, like the Mali, but see, I'm speaking about mostly about just that's down in the Soweto Hills. I think that's what they call it, and that great snake. I think it's like a 75,000-year-old great snake carved of stone.
The what?
Yes, ma'am. It's a 75,000-year-old snake that's carved of stone. I think it's like 70 foot long or something like that. But it's in Soweto Hills in South. It's a part of the same. Yes, ma'am. I say it again. TSO CSOLIDO Hills, and I'm believing that it's in Swaziland. I'm pronouncing Toledo Hills, and it's in Swaziland, and they say all of this is connected. And if the guy was even talking serious, I probably could tell you his name, but I pushed his name out of my mind because, you know, his work that he was doing with it was really, I consider him to be a racist, you know, but I do appreciate, you know, I'm glad that he did his little whatever he did because I wouldn't even know about it, but, you know, I'm going to look into more what you gave me, and I'll continue to mute my line because I know a lot of people got a lot to say. Let me mute my line. Good day, everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was great talking.
For sure. I wanted to get the name of the author of the book, Frontier Wars, because I was trying to find that as well, and I couldn't find it.
Okay. I'll send you a link just now.
Oh, beautiful. Outstanding. Okay. It's much later on your end. I know it's after 11 p.m. We want to make sure you can enjoy the rest of your evening and get prepared for tomorrow. I guess really quick before I let you go, I'm trying to pick what I'd be most curious about. Hopefully we can have you back on the program, and then I can address some of the other topics that I didn't get to this time. I'll take Trevor Noah just because some of the other things we'll have an opportunity to ask some of our other guests. Big star, Comedy Central. I had heard a lot of his material even before he got to Comedy Central here in the States. I know he has been criticized. The Washington Post, they did a great article written by Wendy Todd. She's a black female where the title of it, Yes, the New Daily Show host is black. And he spent his career making fun of African Americans. And she talks about how he spent, even before, as I said, he got to the States and was really well known, a lot of his stand-up routine was making fun of black people both on the continent and now black people here in the States. What do you make of his right? And I guess I would even point out, I think Trevor Noah does have a white parent, since we talked about that. But what do you make of Trevor Noah's rise?
Yeah, I was actually trying to find you a critique by this former classmate of mine, of Trevor Noah, and how he used the white supremacist gaze, or try to make fun of black people, using the white supremacist gaze to gain white validation, and for white people to find his jokes funny. So for upward mobility, etc., etc., etc. So I think that the paper by her is very important. I have many problems with Trevor Noah. So in for instance, in the ways that he makes fun of black people, I think it's to give white people permission to make fun of us, or to make white people believe it's okay to make fun of us. And some of his shows that I've watched, I'm like, these white people are laughing too hard at these jokes, making fun of us. And so, yeah, I find him problematic in many ways. But I really don't know. I don't know how to feel, because even when he got the job, I don't know whether to congratulate him or not, because I understand, the problematic history of his jokes. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not a huge fan.
Me either. I would enjoy checking out the paper. I guess if it's your friend, if she wrote a week or what have you.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign it now and send you a link.
Outstanding. It has been awesome. I was stunned. Your English is spectacular. I would have never even thought that was not your first language.
What are you trying to say about black people? No.
It's all. I was just stunned when you said that to one of our listeners that your English is not that good. It's like, wow, I was pretty impressed. But at any rate, it has been awesome having you on the program and just hearing your views. As I said, it would be fantastic to have you back on the program to just get updates on some of the things that you all are working on and some of your works. We're going to check out some of the books that you recommended. I told listeners, like, wow, when I saw you on Al Jazeera's The Stream, like, wow, she's really awesome views and like stunningly beautiful on top of it. I'm just super impressed. And like I said, really looking forward to having you back on the program and following your information for folks that are on Twitter. Or if you just look at the description for the program, we have her Twitter account linked. So you can follow or just check out some of the information. She has a lot of great articles and books and just great resources that'll give you more information and folks that want to check and be in the know about what's happening in South Africa. But really, really appreciate you taking some of your Sunday to speak with us. Has been fantastic, and we just look forward to remaining in contact.
Definitely, it was so fantastic to speak to you guys. And everyone, thank you for everyone who called in. It was really great. I have such a deep connection with African Americans. It's insane. And I think I want to come and do my PhD there, or so I can be around you guys. And I'm going to send my friend, his name is Justin Hansford. I met him on an exchange here in South Africa, and he was writing a book on Nelson Mandela. He was involved in Ferguson and represented the family of Mike Brown at the UN. And I think he'd be a great person to also speak to on your show about how, in terms of racism and the law, and he teaches on using critical race theory to analyze the law. So it was just great speaking to everyone and reminding me how great you guys are.
Oh, pleasure was ours. Pleasure was ours. Yeah, if you give me his name. And if I would be really elated. Any of the white comrades that you respect for what they're doing, tell them we
they might try on the show and be like, oh my gosh, I hate white people. But okay, I'll give you one.
Okay, outstanding. Cool. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll definitely speak with you soon.
Thank you so much.
For sure.
Bye.
Take care. Good evening. Context of White Supremacy. Fantastic. Really glad I checked that. I would encourage folks, watch the stream on Al Jazeera. I don't necessarily agree with all their content, but they do have quite a few programs where they are talking directly about racism in different parts of the world. Sometimes it's things that are happening here in the U.S., and other times it's things that are happening on the continent or wherever else it happens to be. But they do a lot of programs that directly deal with racism. Al Jazeera's the stream. It's like a 40-minute program, and they have like 2 or 3 that come on per week, a television program that comes on 2 or 3 times a week. But really glad I caught that with her on just like 2 weeks ago, Ms. Simamkele Dlakavu. And again, her Twitter is linked in the program. She sent me all kinds of links on my Twitter while we were going to different things that she was referencing, so I put them on my Facebook page and tweet them out so that people can follow up to get more information. And I already put the article that she referenced about her views on tragic arrangements, interracial relationships, the piece that she wrote. I put it on my Facebook page as well. And I think I tweeted it out also during the program. So if you want to check that out, you can do so to see what she has to say about that. Really hoping we can get her back on the program. Always, always, always enjoy having folks from the continent on the broadcast. And thanks to the folks for tuning in early, because this is certainly much earlier than our typical broadcast time. It's like 11:30 in South Africa right now. It's a 9-hour time difference between me being here on the West Coast and the folks in South Africa specifically. So definitely appreciate people being able to tune in earlier, and it'll be in the archives if you're not able to tune in live. Folks have any quick comments that they would like to share before we get ready to wrap things up? We should be back on Wednesday. We were supposed to be here tomorrow. We were really going to be flexing like our international might on the cows, because we were going to have Professor Afua Cooper on the program tomorrow. She's in Nova Scotia, Canada. We had our caller in Canada with us earlier. She was supposed to be here tomorrow, and I just had to reschedule because for whatever reason, the book is being really sluggish in getting here. It was ordered almost immediately when I made the request for the book, but for whatever reason, it's just the mail has been slow or white interference, whatever. But I still don't have it. So eventually, I guess the book will arrive. I can read it, and we can be prepped for the program. So hopefully that'll happen during the first weekend in July. However, we should have a white person in Canada on the program this coming Wednesday, also talking about the history, evolution of white supremacy in that part of the world. We're going to have back-to-back Canadian guests on the program, but we'll just have to settle for this coming Wednesday. But we'll be back. That program will be at the normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Wednesday evening. You can just check the Black Talk Radio page, the Facebook page for updates when we're going to have future broadcasts and the times and what have you. Anywho, folks have anything they want to share quickly before we get ready to wrap up? It's so early. You can still go out and enjoy your Sunday. It is a beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. Cannot wait to get outside and get a little bit of sunshine because it has not been summer weather at all here since April, really. It was really nice and warm in April, and then it got cold for May and June. But it is starting to warm back up, so I'm looking forward to getting outside. But folks that dialed in, if they had anything they wanted to share, what they heard from the guest, caller at 9516. I know you didn't get an opportunity to get your question in. Did you have anything that you wanted to share? If you wanted to share your question or just any observations from what you heard?
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask her about people, Black Americans going over to Africa, like have their attitudes changed, over the years, because a lot of times you have conversations, or I've had conversations with Black people here, and they always have bad things to say about Africa. So I was just wondering, had the attitudes of Black people that come from America that she's encountered, have those attitudes changed in it?
Wow, it seems like she has had a lot of constructive experiences, present company excluded. It seems like she's had a lot of positive experiences with Black folks from the States based on her conversation, either people coming over there and her saying that she wanted to come here to do some graduate work. So it doesn't seem like she's had too tough an experience with folks repping from this part of the world. Any of the other folks who dialed in have questions, observations from what they heard from the guest?
Yeah,
I have a
I was
question.
hoping she got into the British. She didn't really touch on that too much. I wanted to know the effects that was going to have on the Black people in South Africa, being that they're their number one trading region. And I wanted you to repeat that number you said earlier. How much is a 6 cents to $1 or something there? The exchange rate? You mentioned
their currency, the rand, the exchange rate for the dollar, it's 1 rand is about 6 cents. That's the exchange rate. In my opinion, if you want to make it clear so you can start to quantify white supremacy and the global implications, again, South Africa, so I have been told, that is one of the stronger economies on the continent. I could be in error, but I feel like I've seen that reported regularly in comparison to many of the other countries, quote unquote, on the continent, that South Africa is supposed to be one of the stronger, if not the strongest economy. So if it's 1 rand is 6 cents, that's the exchange rate. That is a whole nother level of perspective on why white people would flock to the continent. You would not even have to be a super rich white person to be able to go there and ball out of control. And I'm sure it was even better before the 2008 recession, as they call it. I'm sure it was even better. I can't even imagine, but we could be talking like 1 rand is like a tenth of a penny or something really ridiculous earlier. So I can totally understand why you would want to just go. You could borrow the bar out every day. You could buy the bar out every day and buy all kinds of stuff. I think she said her tuition and fees and everything for school is 40,000 rand. That would be about $2,600 US.
Wow. Well, do you think, the whites there use the rand system as well, right? The Boers?
Right.
Okay, so okay. Wow, that is a huge differential. I thought they would be more on par with the dollar, being that they are a white country. So that's wow. They're living real high off the hog, as some would say over there, man. I'm with my mind thinking.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have two questions. In regards to South Africa, how do you? Because she brought up Robert Soweto. How do you spell his name? If I even pronounced it right, or do you know?
You mean Robert Sobukwe, or are you talking about?
Yeah, Sobukwe. Yes.
People? Okay, Robert Sobukwe. Give me 1 second. I'll tell you. The thing I was going to say about the Brexit, she had written about that specifically, and she said that already the Brexit vote was Thursday, that the rand has already weakened by 8%, so it might even be getting worse than 1 rand to 6 cent U.S. It might even be getting worse, but she said that the rand has already been weakened by 8% since the Brexit vote happened, that they're going to leave, that Britain is going to leave the European Union at the end of last week. And as I think I said on the compensatory call-in yesterday, that South Africa, one of the main areas that they do trade with is Britain, and that this is going to have a big impact on their trade relations. You have a lot of companies that have offices and what have you in Britain, and that was something I had highlighted to ask her, but just got caught up in a lot of other things. Again, the only reason that I pushed that off to ask about Trevor Noah is that I think we're going to have black people in the UK on the program soon, so they can speak to that directly, since they're right there in the UK and the ramifications of that. And some of the black people that I'm thinking of, they are knowledgeable about economics on the continent as well. So I think we'll be able to spend more time talking about what happened with all that and the implications for black people globally. That was the only reason. And I can totally understand if people are like, I don't care about Trevor Noah. It would have been better for you to ask about Brexit earlier in the program, so we could have heard her view on that. But she did comment on that. Now, Robert Sobukwe. The spelling of it, I believe, is, or not believe, I think I can give it to you accurately, Sobukwe. Robert Sobukwe. And the book she gave was How a Man Can Die Better. How can a man die better? Excuse me. How can a man die better?
Okay, thank you. Now for my next question, do you know who's the white Canadian guest coming on?
That is, oops. If you give me a second, I can give you his name too. I can just pull up the book because it was one of your recommendations. So somebody that you said we should get on the program. That's who it is. It's let's see. Graham Reynolds.
Okay, I don't think I remember.
Viola Desmond's Canada, A History of Blacks and Racial Segregation in the Promised Land.
Oh, yep, okay. I remember that. Okay, thank you.
Wednesday, normal program time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Okay.
Other folks, any observations? Are everybody good? Anything else folks want to make sure they got in?
Yes, I want to address what the lady was saying earlier about how Black Americans take continental Africans. I'm from Virginia, and I met a fellow African American in the library, and he lived in, I forgot what part he lived of Africa, but he lived in Africa for like 7 years, and he had nothing but praise for it. He said it wasn't perfect, but living there for 7 years, you can see how backwards it is here as far as relationships between men and women and how they conduct themselves. And that's his only criticism. He said the men are too spoiled and they should give in a little, but that was a minor complaint or a minor grievance or whatever. It also, the things he relayed to me about how they live and everything, it validated a lot of my own personal research. So that's all I had to say.
Anything else, folks, wanted to get in? I was going to ask her how she felt about Idris Elba, him playing Madiba in the movie, because I know we talk a lot of times in the U.S. context about having black people that were not born in the States, portraying well-known black people, Dr. King or other folks, Coretta Scott King, having black people, black actors, actresses that were not born here playing these people. And they've done the same thing on the continent as well. Steve Biko, I think Denzel Washington played Steve Biko in Cry Freedom. I was going to ask her about that as well, but next time. Anybody else? Anything that we're going to get in?
I wanted to say to the caller from Alabama to Google the Holy Tablets. The Holy Tablets. It's a book written by Dr. York. It should come up in for free on Google. You can just read it on your device. But it talks a lot about the aliens and things like that, and it kind of puts all the religions into it as well. It's a very interesting read, fiction.
Everybody satisfied, or? I assume everybody got their commentary in who had something they wanted to share. We had one person that wrote in, a listener, their comment, was, okay, they were just appreciative of the guest. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to get her on the program as well. It was kind of short notice, but also glad she could hang out. I assume all the folks are good, who had a hand up since nobody else spoke up to get anything in. As I said, we should be here on minimum Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Graham Reynolds should be here, Racism, White Supremacy in Canada, and we might even be here before then. Just, again, check the Black Talk Radio page, Facebook page. We'll have updates for coming broadcast, the time, guests, all that, so you can be well prepared. Excuse me. Again, if anyone is interested in checking out the Book of Matt, that is about the death of Matthew Shepard, where they are calling this a hate crime. This book, the thesis of the book is that this was not a hate crime, that this was basically just a drug deal gone bad, and this death has been deceptively used as a part of the mythology of a war on gays, and look how bad we're treated, which really has picked up with what happened in Orlando over the past couple weeks or so. But he'll be on the program a week from today to talk about that book, the Book of Matt. I'm really looking forward to it. If any folks are interested in reading, it's not that long. If you're interested in reading to prepare, that's what I'll be reading this week. Let me know. It'll be great to read with other folks in preparation for the program. Really looking forward to it. And an important book, in my opinion, because they attached his name, Matthew Shepard, to the hate crime bill that was passed, I believe, under Bill Clinton, the James Byrd Jr. Matthew Shepard Hate Crime Act, again, making it synonymous as though white supremacy and what is happening allegedly to gay and LGBT people are synonymous, one and the same. And I just said that's just another aspect of the deception that's happening worldwide. That was something else I was going to ask her about as well, because I see that happening on the continent, South Africa specifically, but on the continent more generally. Same thing that they're doing here, that they're doing over there. Anywho, hope folks got some constructive information. I think it's always good to be able to talk to folks different parts of the world and just see how many things are similar. So much of what she said applies directly to how the plantation operates in this part of the world. If you have any questions, confusion, guest suggestions, gripes, as I said, she gave out a lot of links to different books and resources that she would recommend. I'm just going to put them on my Facebook page. They'll be in the Facebook group. I'll tweet them out as well, so you can do further research if you're interested in checking on some of the things that she encouraged us to check up on. Miners Shot Down, fantastic documentary on the Marikana mining slaughter that happened in the summer of 2012. Rihad Desai, he was on the program in 2014. He did two great documentaries, as I said, Bambaataa 1906, which is also just really, really well done documentary and talking about black people working against racism, white supremacy, and even resorting to killing whites on the continent. Really great films that you can check out. And again, Mr. Desai, the filmmaker, he was a guest on the program. You can visit the archives as well. Thanks for tuning in early to the program. If you're going to go out and do whatever you do to enjoy your Sunday, since it's still pretty early for folks in the States, even people on the East Coast, I would just encourage be codified. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white terrorism. We are facing war in all areas of people activity worldwide every single day. We want to always make sure we're in position to make fantastic decisions to keep ourselves safe. Certainly, if you're going to be in a vehicle, you do not want to be under the influence, and that goes if you're the driver, passenger, even as a pedestrian. You never know when it's going to be Darren Wilson, Daniel Holtzclaw, that's the one that's pulling you over, that could be easily taking your life, putting you in greater confinement, or just causing you a mess of unnecessary and easily avoidable problems that last for years. Keep that in mind, and you want to make great decisions. Keep yourself safe and anybody else that you might be responsible for that's with you or in your vehicle or whatever the case may be. Let's not make race soldiers' job any easier. And certainly buckle up if you're going to be in a vehicle. Let's do all we can to minimize contact with race soldiers. I will say again, two of the worst words to be together in the English language, alcohol and whites. That is a bad combination anytime, any place, any circumstances. With that, invest if you think the program is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Listener-supported counter-racist radio. You'll see the PayPal button in the top right corner. If you're not into PayPal, drop us an email. We'll get you a physical mailing address. Again, massive thanks to all the folks who have invested, contributed down through the years. I hope the program has been, continues to be worthy of your time and energy. With that, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cows signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Mm-hmm. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.